Please be advised that this story contains themes of psychological mystery and unsettling phenomena that some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. The sun beat down on Oakhaven that afternoon, a perfect late summer glow that painted the quaint suburban streets in shades of gold and amber. Every house, every tree, every lamppost cast a long, definitive shadow, stretching out like dark, silent sentinels across manicured lawns. Every house, every tree, every lamppost, and every person, except for one. I remember the exact moment I first saw it, or rather didn't see it. I was sketching in my sunroom, the large bay window offering a panoramic view of Elmwood Park across the street, where the neighborhood kids often played. My pencil paused over the paper, my eyes drawn to a small figure by the old oak tree, a boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, meticulously stacking fallen leaves into a neat pile. He was framed perfectly against the late afternoon light, the kind of light that usually exaggerates shadows, turning them into dramatic, elongated distortions. But there was nothing. Not a whisper of a silhouette on the grass beneath him, no dark smear extending from his small frame. Just the boy standing in the full, unforgiving glare of the sun, utterly shadowless. My first thought naturally was that my eyes were playing tricks on me. A trick of the light, an optical illusion, a momentary lapse in my own perception. I rubbed my eyes, blinked hard, even stood up and walked closer to the window, pressing my face against the cool glass. He was still there, a boy with sandy blonde hair and a bright blue t-shirt, methodically going about his leaf stacking, and still no shadow. The oak tree behind him, massive and ancient, cast a colossal inky black shape that swallowed half the park bench. A squirrel darting across the grass had its tiny fleeting shadow chasing it. Even a discarded plastic bottle shimmered with a faint, distorted reflection of itself. But the boy? Nothing. He was like a cutout, pasted onto the vibrant canvas of the park, utterly disconnected from the laws of light and physics that governed everything else around him. A shiver, cold and sharp, traced its way down my spine despite the warmth of the afternoon. It wasn't just bizarre. It was deeply fundamentally wrong. My mind, usually so quick to rationalize, found itself scrambling, grasping for any logical explanation. Maybe it was the angle? No, I'd seen him from every angle as he moved. Maybe a rare atmospheric phenomenon? But the sky was clear, typical Oakhaven blue. My blood ran cold as a single chilling thought solidified in my mind. I was seeing exactly what I was seeing. And what I was seeing was impossible. I tried to shake it off, to dismiss it as an overactive imagination fueled by too much caffeine and too many hours staring at a blank canvas. I told myself it was just a strange quirk, something I'd forget by morning. But I couldn't. The image of that boy, bathed in light yet leaving no trace, burned itself into my consciousness. His name, I vaguely recalled from neighborhood chatter, was Liam Miller. The Millers had moved into the old Victorian on Hemlock Lane about 6 months ago. Quiet people, I'd heard, kept to themselves. Liam was often seen playing alone in the park, a solitary figure amidst the usual chaos of childhood. I hadn't paid him much mind until now. The next day, I found myself drawn back to the window. It felt almost involuntary, a magnetic pull. I told myself I was just curious, just wanted to prove myself wrong. But deep down, I knew I was looking for him. And there he was, a little later in the morning, under a brighter, more direct sun. My curiosity, once a gentle nudge, transformed into a relentless, burning obsession. I started researching shadows, light, optical phenomena, even folklore. Was there any precedent for this? Any myth, any legend, any scientific anomaly that could explain a person without a shadow? I found tales of vampires, of soulless beings, of individuals cursed or blessed with otherworldly properties. None of it felt right. None of it fit the image of a seemingly normal leaf-stacking, kite-flying boy. The more I delved, the more isolated I felt. The cheerful normalcy of Oakhaven, once a comfort, now seemed like a fragile facade, barely concealing something profoundly disturbing. I started to feel a prickle of paranoia. Was someone watching me watching Liam? Was my intense observation of him becoming noticeable? I found myself lowering the blinds more often, peeking through the slats like a spy. The friendly waves from neighbors on their morning walks now felt like scrutinizing glances. One evening, as dusk settled over Oakhaven, painting the sky in soft purples and oranges, I saw Liam walking home from the park. He paused at the edge of his yard, turning his head slowly, deliberately, his gaze sweeping across the street. For a split second, I felt his eyes land directly on my window, on me. My heart leaped into my throat. He didn't wave, he didn't smile. He just stared, his young face unreadable, before turning and disappearing into the deepening twilight. That night I knew. This wasn't just a strange observation anymore. This was a secret, and I was now a part of it. The boy who cast no shadow was more than an enigma. He was a silent challenge, a profound mystery waiting to be unraveled. And I, Sarah Jenkins, was now irrevocably drawn into its chilling depths. I had to know why. And the unsettling feeling that I might already be too deep to turn back was a heavy, cold weight in my chest. The next morning, the heavy weight in my chest had only intensified, transforming into a restless energy. Sleep had offered no escape, only fragmented images of a boy without a shadow, a silent accusation in his eyes. I had to act. My journalistic instincts, long dormant in the quiet rhythm of our small town, surged to life. I needed facts, names, addresses. My first stop was the public library. Mrs. Henderson, the librarian, a woman whose knowledge of local history was rivaled only by her collection of cat-themed sweaters, greeted me with a warm smile. I bypassed the fiction section, heading straight for the local archives, a dusty corner filled with old newspapers, town directories, and historical records. My heart pounded a little faster as I pulled up the most recent town registry. It didn't take long. Ethan Miller, age 8. Parents, David and Emily Miller. An address on the outskirts of town, nestled near the old forest road. The Millers had moved here roughly 5 years ago, according to the records. Nothing seemed out of place, no red flags. Just a simple family living a simple life. Or so it seemed. I drove past their house later that afternoon. It was an older Victorian-style home, set back from the road, partially obscured by overgrown oak trees. The paint was pristine, the lawn meticulously kept, but there was an unsettling stillness about it. No toys scattered in the yard, no car in the driveway, no sign of life. Every window was shrouded by heavy, dark curtains, giving the house an unnerving blind stare. It felt less like a home and more like a carefully constructed shell, designed to keep the world out. I couldn't just knock on their door. Not yet. It would be too direct, too confrontational. I needed more information, a way in that wouldn't immediately put them on guard. I needed to talk to someone who knew them or at least knew of them. My mind immediately went to Agnes Peterson. Agnes ran a small, cluttered antique shop downtown, a treasure trove of forgotten trinkets and whispered histories. She'd lived in this town her entire life, and it was widely known that if a secret existed in Willow Creek, Agnes probably knew its first name, middle name, and where it kept its spare key. The bell above the door chimed softly as I entered Agnes's shop, the air thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. Agnes, a wisp of a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing, looked up from behind a counter piled high with vintage lace. "Sarah, dear," she said, her voice raspy but kind. "To what do I owe the pleasure? Not often I see you stray from your newspaper office these days." I managed a weak smile. "Just browsing, Agnes. Though, actually, I was hoping you might be able to help me with something." She leaned forward, her eyes twinkling. "Oh, a story perhaps. Something like that," I admitted, my voice dropping a little. "I was wondering if you knew anything about the Miller family. They live out near the old forest road." Agnes's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. The pleasant twinkle in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a cautious reserve. "The Millers," she repeated, her tone flat. She picked up a delicate porcelain doll, meticulously dusting its tiny dress. "They keep to themselves, Sarah. Always have." "I noticed their house," I pressed gently. "Very secluded. Did they move here recently?" "About 5 years back," she confirmed, still focused on the doll. "Bought the old Blackwood place. It had been empty for years before that. Folks said it was haunted, but that's just old wives' tales, of course." She paused, then added, almost to herself, "Though the Blackwoods did leave rather suddenly, didn't they? Packed up in the dead of night, so the story goes." My ears perked up. "Suddenly? Why?" Agnes shrugged, a dismissive gesture, but her gaze lingered on a dusty grandfather clock in the corner. "Who knows? Personal reasons, I suppose. Anyway, the Millers moved in not long after. David and Emily. And their little boy, Ethan. I saw Ethan the other day," I ventured, trying to sound casual. "He seemed a quiet child." Agnes finally met my gaze, and there was something in her eyes now, a flicker of concern, perhaps even pity. "Quiet is one word for it. He's a strange one, that boy. Never plays with the other children. Always seems to be walking a half step behind his parents, like a shadow trying to catch up. She paused, then chuckled humorlessly. Funny that. Because he doesn't have one, does he? My breath hitched. She knew. She had seen it too. You've noticed that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Agnes nodded slowly. Everyone has, dear. Or at least everyone who's paid enough attention. It's not something you forget, seeing a child without a shadow. Especially not around here. She gestured vaguely around the shop. This town has its share of old stories, Sarah. Legends that people usually laugh off, but sometimes they feel a little too real. What kind of legends? I prompted, my heart racing. Agnes set the doll down, her gaze now fixed on me, grave and unblinking. There's an old tale passed down through generations about the Whispering Wood. It's just beyond the Miller property, you know? They say that long ago, when the town was first settled, a young boy wandered into those woods and was never seen again. But his parents, desperate to bring him back, made a pact with something in the trees. They got their son back, but he was different. They say he came back without his reflection, without his echo, without his shadow. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. They say that sometimes, when the veil between worlds thins, the Whispering Wood demands its due. It takes a piece of you, your essence, your very self. And if it takes your shadow, you're not truly whole anymore. You're just a shell, a borrowed form. A chill snaked its way down my spine despite the warmth of the shop. A pact? A stolen essence? It sounded like something out of a Gothic novel. But the way Agnes spoke, the genuine fear in her eyes, made it feel undeniably real. So, people think Ethan? I couldn't bring myself to finish the sentence. Agnes sighed, a long, weary sound. People don't say much about the Millers, Sarah. They keep their distance. Safer that way. Some things are better left undisturbed. She gave me a pointed look. You're a journalist, dear. You like to dig. But some holes, once you start digging, are impossible to climb out of. I thanked Agnes, my mind reeling, and left the shop, the chime of the bell sounding like a warning this time. The old woman's words, the Blackwood's sudden departure, the local legend. It all coalesced into a terrifying mosaic. Ethan wasn't just a boy with a strange medical anomaly. He was a puzzle piece in a much larger, darker picture. That night, back in the quiet solitude of my own home, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Agnes's warning echoed in my ears. I pulled up my laptop, typing Whispering Wood Willow Creek legend into the search bar. The results were sparse, mostly defunct local history blogs and forums, but they corroborated Agnes's story. Tales of lost children, strange lights in the woods, and the recurring motif of something taken. As I scrolled through a particularly obscure forum post from years ago, detailing an encounter with a hollow child near the Blackwood property, my internet connection suddenly flickered and died. I frowned, checking the router. All the lights were green. I tried again, but nothing. It was as if something had deliberately cut me off. I sighed, annoyed, and got up to make some tea. As I walked into the kitchen, I noticed it. The back door, which I distinctly remembered locking and bolting earlier that evening, was slightly ajar. Just a crack, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. A cold draft snaked its way through the gap, raising goosebumps on my arms. My heart hammered against my ribs. I hadn't heard a sound. No forced entry, no broken glass. Just a door, ever so slightly open. I slowly approached it, my hand reaching for the heavy wooden baseball bat I kept hidden behind the pantry door. With a trembling hand, I pushed the door shut, locking and bolting it with a resounding click. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the silence of my house, my breath ragged. Had I simply forgotten to lock it? It was possible, but highly unlikely. I was meticulous about security, and the internet cutting out just as I was getting close to something, it felt too coincidental. A profound chill settled over me, far colder than any draft. It wasn't just a feeling of being watched anymore. It was a certainty. Someone had been in my house. Someone knew I was digging, and they wanted me to stop. The thought was a venomous whisper in my mind, a terrifying confirmation that Agnes was right. I was already in too deep, and whatever I had stumbled upon was now reaching back for me. The adrenaline surged through me, cold and sharp, eclipsing the fear for a moment. Someone had been inside my house, my sanctuary violated. The back door ajar, the lock clearly tampered with, a crude attempt at resecuring it failing miserably. A single broken window pane, patched clumsily with duct tape, suggested a hurried entry, not a professional job. This wasn't a random burglary. It was a message. They hadn't taken anything valuable, not that I could tell. Instead, my research notes were scattered, some torn, others deliberately crumpled. My laptop, thankfully, seemed untouched. But the subtle shift in its position on my desk told a different story. They had searched. They were looking for something specific, or perhaps they were just trying to scare me. I moved through the house like a ghost, every creak of the floorboards a thunderclap, every shadow a lurking menace. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. Agnes's words echoed in my mind, a terrifying prophecy fulfilled. Asterisk, some things are better left buried. Asterisk, I was in too deep, she'd said. And now whatever I had stirred up was indeed reaching back for me. My first instinct was to call the police. But who would I call? The local sheriff, probably a cousin or an old friend of one of the very people watching me. This wasn't a town where you called for outside help. This was a place where problems were handled internally, quietly, perhaps brutally. I remembered the way people had looked at me, the veiled hostility, the sudden silences when I approached. They were a community, a single impenetrable unit. And I was the outsider, the trespasser. I spent the rest of the night securing everything I could. I nailed the back door shut, boarded up the broken window, and even rigged a makeshift alarm system with tin cans and string around the perimeter. It was pathetic, but it made me feel marginally safer. Sleep was impossible. Every rustle of leaves outside, every distant hoot of an owl, sent a jolt of terror through me. I sat in the dark living room, a heavy flashlight clutched in my hand, my gaze fixed on the front door, waiting for the next intrusion, the next message. By dawn, exhaustion had settled deep into my bones, but it was accompanied by a new steely resolve. Fear was a powerful motivator, but so was defiance. They wanted me to stop. They wanted me to leave. Not now. Not after this. This intrusion, this blatant threat, had only solidified my determination. Whatever secret this town held, whatever darkness lurked beneath its placid surface, I was going to uncover it. And not just for Daniel, but for myself. For the violation of my peace, for the threat to my safety. I knew I couldn't go to the library again. Any public place where my research could be observed was now off limits. I needed a new approach, a more discreet one. My laptop was still functional, and despite the town's isolation, I had a surprisingly decent internet connection through my mobile hotspot. It was a lifeline, a window to the outside world this town so desperately tried to shut out. I began by searching for Havenwood, Maine, and local history. Most of the results were generic, tourism-focused pages, or bland historical society records. But I dug deeper, filtering by date, looking for obscure forums, old newspaper archives, anything that wasn't officially sanctioned. I typed in keywords: Havenwood strange occurrences, Havenwood folklore, Havenwood disappearances. It was slow, painstaking work. Most leads were dead ends, misinterpreted local legends, or simply the ramblings of internet conspiracy theorists. But then, I stumbled upon a digitized collection of old town council meeting minutes from the late 1800s. They were scanned images, barely legible, but with careful magnification and a lot of squinting, I could make out some interesting details. The names. They kept reappearing. Caldwell, Blackwood, Thorne. These weren't just common surnames. They were the names of the founding families Agnes had mentioned, and they dominated every aspect of the town's early governance. They controlled the land, the lumber mills, the fishing enterprises, even the local church. What was more striking was the consistent language used in certain older entries, references to the covenant, the balance, and the price of prosperity. These weren't terms usually found in mundane council minutes. They sounded ritualistic. One entry, dated October 1897, caught my eye. It discussed a sudden, devastating blight that had swept through the town, affecting crops, livestock, and strangely, the health of the children. It spoke of a great sickness that stole the light from the young one's eyes. The records then abruptly shifted. After a period of urgent, almost panicked meetings, a new series of entries detailed the implementation of the Havenwood Accord, a set of strict, almost draconian rules governing community life, land ownership, and even marriage within the founding families. It ended with a chilling line. And so the balance was restored, and the shadows were kept at bay. Shadows kept at bay? The phrase sent a shiver down my spine. Was this a metaphor? Or something more literal? Was this linked to Daniel? I decided I needed to see Daniel again, but this time from a safe distance, unnoticed. The next afternoon, armed with a pair of binoculars and a renewed sense of caution, I drove my car to the perimeter of the school grounds, parking on a quiet, tree-lined street a few blocks away. I wanted to observe Daniel during recess, when children were most uninhibited, when their natural exuberance might reveal something. From my vantage point, I watched the schoolyard through the binoculars. Children ran, laughed, played tag, their shadows stretching long and distorted in the late afternoon sun. And then I saw him. Daniel. He stood apart from the others, near the edge of the playground, under the shade of an old oak tree. He wasn't playing with the other kids. He was just watching them. And even in the shade, even with the sun slanting low, the ground beneath him seemed to absorb all light. There was no distinct outline, no elongated form stretching away from his feet. Just a murky indistinctness where a shadow should have been. It was truly unsettling. But what truly unnerved me was not Daniel himself, but the woman who stood beside him. She was tall, with severe features and hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a dark, sensible dress, even on the warm afternoon. She wasn't a teacher I recognized from my brief visit to the school. She stood close to Daniel, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder, almost possessively. She watched the other children with a gaze that seemed less supervisory and more watchful, protecting Daniel perhaps, or ensuring he didn't stray. And when Daniel occasionally stirred, she would gently, almost imperceptibly, guide him back to his spot, away from the joyful chaos of the other children. She was a guardian, a sentinel. I recognized her from the town council photos I'd seen online. Her name was Eleanor Caldwell, a descendant of one of the founding families, and a prominent figure in Havenwood's current local government. As I watched, a sudden movement caught my eye. A black sedan, too new and polished for this dusty town, drove slowly past my parked car. It didn't stop, but the driver's head turned, just slightly, in my direction. I ducked instinctively, my heart leaping into my throat. Had they seen me? Was it just a coincidence? I couldn't be sure. The car continued down the street and disappeared around a bend. Paranoia gnawed at me. I was being watched. My house, my movements, everything. Later that evening after dark, I decided to take a calculated risk. I needed more information, something beyond old council minutes. I remembered Agnes's house, nestled deep in the woods. I knew she wouldn't be there, but perhaps she had left something behind, something she couldn't take with her, something that might shed light on her warnings. The drive was tense, the narrow, winding dirt road swallowed by the encroaching darkness. My headlights cut a lonely path through the dense forest, the trees pressing in on all sides like silent sentinels. When I finally reached the clearing, Agnes's small cabin looked even more desolate than before. The windows were dark, the porch sagged, and a cold, damp air hung heavy around it. I approached cautiously, my flashlight beam sweeping across the porch. The front door was still unlocked, just as I'd found it before. I pushed it open slowly, the hinges groaning in protest. The air inside was stale, tinged with the scent of damp earth and decay. I didn't turn on the lights. My flashlight was all I dared to use. The cabin was sparsely furnished, but every surface was cluttered with books, papers, and strange, hand-carved wooden figures. Most of the books were about local flora and fauna, or Old Maine history. But then, tucked away beneath a pile of faded maps, I found it. A leather-bound journal, its cover worn smooth with age, its pages brittle and yellowed. It wasn't Agnes's handwriting, it was older, more ornate, almost calligraphic. The name embossed on the first page sent a fresh wave of dread through me. Elias Thorne. Another founding family name. I flipped through the journal, my fingers trembling slightly. It was a personal account, a diary of sorts, detailing life in Havenwood in the mid-18th century. It spoke of the hardship of settlement, the harsh winters, and the ever-present struggle against the wilderness. But then the tone shifted. The entries grew darker, more desperate. He wrote of a shadow sickness that plagued the children, a wasting away of the spirit that left them frail and listless, their bodies hollow husks. He spoke of the elders, the council of the covenant, seeking a solution, a bargain, with something ancient and powerful that resided in the deep woods. One passage made my blood run cold. It described a ritual, a transfer, performed under a specific celestial alignment, involving the purest light and the deepest darkness. The goal, Elias wrote, was to appease the hungry earth and ensure the prosperity of the harvest. But the cost was immense. The child walks among us but not entirely of us, he wrote. He is the vessel, the keeper of the promise. His shadow as sacrifice binds us to the land. As long as he walks without it, Havenwood flourishes. But should the shadow ever return, the balance will shatter, and the land will reclaim its due. My flashlight beam wavered, casting dancing shadows on the cabin walls. Elias Thorne, writing centuries ago, had described Daniel, the boy who casts no shadow. He was not an anomaly. He was a legacy, a living, breathing part of an ancient, terrifying pact. Havenwood's prosperity was built on a sacrifice, a continuous, living sacrifice. And Daniel was that sacrifice. My discovery wasn't just a clue. It was a horrifying truth. And now I understood why they were watching me, why they had broken into my house. I wasn't just digging for a secret. I was threatening the very foundation of their existence. And they would stop at nothing to protect it. They would stop at nothing to protect it. That realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. My hands trembled not just from fear, but from the cold dread that seeped into my bones. Everything I thought I knew, every conspiracy theory I'd ever dismissed, suddenly paled in comparison to the chilling reality I was facing. It wasn't just a boy, Ethan, who cast no shadow. It was a symptom, a marker, a key to something far older, far more sinister, and infinitely more powerful than I could have ever imagined. I stared at the screen, the fragmented data glowing in the dim light of my office. The patterns, the names, the dates, they weren't random. They pointed to a lineage, a recurring anomaly that stretched back centuries, always coinciding with moments of significant historical upheaval. And always there were individuals around these anomalies, individuals who seemed to guide, protect, or perhaps control them. They were the ones watching me, the ones who had ransacked my home, the ones who saw me as an existential threat. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the impossible. A secret society, a cabal that had quietly shaped human history, their power stemming from some unseen manipulation of reality, or perhaps of human perception itself? It sounded like a fevered dream, the ramblings of a paranoid recluse. But the evidence, circumstantial as it might be, was piling up. The consistent reports of children born without shadows, always in families of influence, always disappearing from public record after a certain age, only to resurface years later, often in positions of power, their past scrubbed clean. And the strange, almost imperceptible shifts in historical narratives surrounding these individuals. It was like a carefully woven tapestry, each thread placed with meticulous precision, designed to be invisible to the casual observer. I pushed away from my desk, the chair scraping loudly against the floor, the sound echoing in the silent house. My heart hammered against my ribs. I needed to move. I needed to get out. But where? And to whom could I turn? The very idea of explaining this to anyone felt absurd. They'd think I was insane. And if what I suspected was true, they were everywhere. They had to be. My gaze fell upon a framed photograph on my bookshelf. My younger sister, Emily, smiling brightly, her arm around me. A pang of guilt shot through me. I had dragged her into this, however unwittingly, by simply existing, by pursuing my research. Was she safe? The thought made my blood run cold. I had to warn her. But how, without exposing her further? I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I typed out a message to Emily. "Hey, everything okay? Just checking in. Call me when you can." I hesitated, then added, "Don't mention anything about my work to anyone. Okay? Just a weird feeling." It was vague, too vague, but specific enough to hopefully raise her guard without giving away the terrifying scope of my discovery. I hit send, a knot tightening in my stomach. I knew I couldn't stay. My house, once my sanctuary, now felt like a cage, a trap. They knew I was onto them. They knew I had seen too much. The break-in wasn't just a warning. It was a prelude. They were testing my resolve, trying to intimidate me into silence. But silence was no longer an option. Not when the truth was this monumental. Not when it could rewrite human history. I began to pack, throwing essentials into a worn duffel bag. Laptop, external hard drive with all my research, a burner phone I kept for emergencies, a few changes of clothes, some cash. My mind was a whirlwind of theories and possibilities. If these shadowless individuals were a manipulated lineage, what was their purpose? Were they tools? Or were they something more? And what did the organization gain from controlling them? Power. Immortality? A different kind of existence altogether? A sudden sharp crack from outside made me freeze. I held my breath, straining my ears. Nothing. Just the wind, perhaps rustling through the old oak in my backyard. Or was it? My paranoia was reaching fever pitch, every shadow a lurking threat, every sound a potential harbinger of doom. I crept to the window, peering through the blinds. The street was empty, bathed in the pale glow of the streetlights. Every house was dark, silent. A normal suburban night. Too normal. I remembered the email, the one from the anonymous source, the one that had kickstarted this entire investigation. Look for the boy who casts no shadow. He is the key. They are watching. Who was that source? Someone on the inside? Someone trying to expose them? Or another pawn in their elaborate game? I had dismissed it as a prank at first, a bizarre urban legend, but something about its specificity, its haunting tone had intrigued me. And now I knew it was real. The source was real. The boy was real. And the watchers were terrifyingly real. I had to find the source. They were my only hope, the only other person who seemed to grasp the terrifying scope of this conspiracy. If they were still alive, they might have more pieces of the puzzle, a way to fight back. I pulled out the old laptop, the one I used only for sensitive research, never connected to my main network. I booted it up, the glowing screen a beacon in the darkness. I had meticulously archived every piece of communication from the anonymous source. There was an IP address heavily masked, but I had a friend, Michael, a former hacker I knew from my university days. He owed me a favor. A big one. Michael was the kind of person who thrived on unraveling digital mysteries. The more complex, the better. He might be able to trace it, or at least give me a starting point. I composed an encrypted email to Michael, carefully omitting any details that could compromise him or me. Michael, I need your help with something extremely sensitive. Old favor. IP trace. High priority. No questions, just results. I'll send the details to your secure drop once you confirm. I sent it, then waited, heart pounding. My hands were still shaking, but a new resolve was beginning to take hold. Fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was now mixed with a burning anger, a fierce determination to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. They wanted me silent. They wanted me gone. Then they had underestimated me. Minutes later, a reply chimed on the burner phone. Consider it done, David. Send it. Michael. Dependable, reckless Michael. A glimmer of hope, tiny but persistent, pierced through the gloom. I sent him the masked IP address, along with a few other cryptic data points I had managed to extract from the initial email headers. While I waited for Michael, I continued to scour my research, looking for anything I might have missed, any thread that could lead me closer to an understanding of this organization. My eyes fell on a recurring symbol, a stylized sun with a single elongated ray. It appeared in ancient texts, on strange artifacts, and even subtly woven into the architecture of certain historical buildings. I had dismissed it as a common motif, but now, seeing it again, the connection clicked. It was always present in the vicinity of these shadowless anomalies. It was their mark, their sigil. The more I looked, the more the symbol seemed to appear, hidden in plain sight. On the old photographs of the families connected to the shadowless children. In the background of news clippings from the periods of historical upheaval. It was subtle, almost subliminal, designed to be noticed only by those who knew what to look for. And now I knew. I remembered a conversation I'd had with an old history professor, Dr. Eleanor Vance, years ago. She was a brilliant but eccentric woman, obsessed with esoteric historical societies and forgotten lore. She had once mentioned a mysterious group, referred to in some obscure texts as the Umbra Custodes, the Shadow Keepers. She had laughed it off as a myth, a fanciful legend, but the name resonated deeply now. Shadow Keepers. Fit. Too perfectly. Could it be? Could this organization, the Umbra Custodes, have been operating for centuries, orchestrating events, manipulating powerful individuals, all through the control of these shadowless beings? What was their ultimate goal? What immense power did these individuals possess that made them so valuable, so essential to this hidden society's existence? And what happened to them once they disappeared from public record? Were they assimilated? Trained? Used? I thought of Ethan, the boy I had seen in that remote mountain town, the boy who simply didn't cast a shadow. He was so young, so innocent. Was he a child of this lineage? Was he marked for a life of quiet servitude to the Umbra Custodes? The thought sickened me. My phone buzzed. A message from Michael. Got something. It's a dead end mostly, but there's a ghost. A server farm in Nevada specifically. Old decommissioned, but something still pinging there weekly, like a forgotten heartbeat. Nevada. A decommissioned server farm. Old but still alive. It sounded like a digital graveyard. A place where secrets went to die or perhaps to be preserved in amber. It was a long shot, but it was a lead. And in this terrifying game of hide and seek, a lead was everything. I quickly cross-referenced the Nevada server farm with the historical data I had on the Umber Custodes symbol. Nothing immediately obvious. But then a flicker of an idea. What if the physical location of the server farm wasn't the point? What if it was about what used to be there? Or what was connected to it? I remembered a series of mysterious disappearances from the 1950s, a cluster of scientists and researchers working on advanced theoretical physics, near a military base in Nevada. Their work was classified, their disappearances never fully explained. The official story was an industrial accident, but the details were always murky, contradictory. I had dismissed it as another Cold War enigma. But now, with the chilling context of the Umber Custodes and the shadowless lineage, a different picture began to form. What if these scientists weren't working on nuclear weapons or rocket science? What if they were studying something far more fundamental? Something related to the very fabric of reality, to light, to shadows, to existence itself? And what if the Umber Custodes had orchestrated their disappearances, not to silence them, but to acquire their research? The pieces were starting to fit, forming a terrifying mosaic. The shadowless children, the ancient society, the historical manipulations, the advanced research. It all pointed to a singular, horrifying conclusion. The Umber Custodes weren't just protecting a secret. They were harnessing a fundamental force, a power that could alter reality itself. And the boy who cast no shadow, Ethan, was not just a curiosity. He was the living embodiment of that power, or perhaps the key to unlocking it. I had to go to Nevada. It was a desperate, dangerous move, but I had no choice. The answers were there, buried in that digital graveyard, or perhaps in the physical ruins of whatever facility had once stood near that server farm. I knew they were watching. I knew my life was on the line. But the truth, the sheer, unimaginable magnitude of it, compelled me forward. I had stumbled onto something that could change everything anyone understood about humanity, about power, about the very nature of existence. And I wouldn't turn back now. As I zipped up my duffel bag, the house plunged into darkness. The power was out. My heart leaped into my throat. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't the wind. They were here. The darkness was absolute. A sudden, suffocating blanket that swallowed the last vestiges of twilight seeping through the windows. My breath hitched, a ragged gasp caught in my throat. This wasn't a storm, wasn't a tripped breaker. The silence that followed the abrupt cut of power was heavier, more profound than any natural quiet. It buzzed with an ominous energy, a palpable presence that prickled the hairs on my arms. They were here. The thought wasn't a guess, it was a cold, hard certainty that settled deep in my bones. My hand, still gripping the zipper of my duffel bag, froze. Every muscle in my body tense, preparing for what? I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't stay still. My mind raced, sifting through every horror movie cliché, every survival instinct I'd ever heard of. Don't make a sound. Find a weapon. Find an exit. The floorboards creaked somewhere above me, a faint, almost imperceptible groan that seemed to echo in the sudden void of sound. It wasn't a heavy footfall, more like the settling of an old house, but I knew better. My house was silent. My house was mine. And now it wasn't. I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, my fingers clumsy with adrenaline. The cold metal was a small comfort, a tether to the familiar world. I thumbed the power button and a weak blue-white beam cut through the oppressive blackness, illuminating a small circle on the floor. It wasn't enough. It would only make me a target. I switched it off immediately, opting for the darkness and my heightened senses. My eyes, already accustomed to the dimming light from earlier, strained to adjust to the total absence of it. Shapes began to form, vague outlines of furniture, deeper shades within the black. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat demanding escape. I needed to move, and I needed to move now. My plan was simple: get out of the house. The back door through the kitchen. It was the quickest, most direct route to the relative safety of the woods behind my property. I clutched the duffel bag tighter, its weight a familiar anchor. Each step I took was deliberate, slow, testing the floorboards before committing my full weight. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of dust and something else. Something metallic and faintly sweet, like ozone after a lightning strike, but without the storm. I crept through the living room, past the phantom shapes of my sofa and coffee table. The silence of the house was broken only by the frantic thumping in my chest, and the almost imperceptible whisper of my own clothing. My ears strained, trying to pick up any sound, any indication of movement other than my own. Another creak, closer this time, from the hallway, leading towards the kitchen. A muffled brushing sound, as if something was being dragged, or someone was moving with incredible stealth, their clothes rustling against the wall. They were between me and the back door. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. My throat was dry, my palms slick with sweat. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to melt into the shadows, to become as insubstantial as the boy I was searching for. My mind screamed at me to run, to bolt, to just make noise and try to scare them off, but a deeper, colder instinct held me back. These weren't ordinary intruders. The way they moved, the eerie silence, the calculated outage. This was something else entirely. I peered down the hallway, my vision slowly adapting. The faint outlines of the doorways were just visible, and then I saw it, or rather I didn't see it. A disturbance in the darkness. A deeper pooling of shadow where there should have been the faint outline of a body, or at least a distortion of the natural gloom. It was like a void, a place where light simply ceased to exist, even the ambient light that had no source. It moved, a ripple in the fabric of the night, slowly, deliberately, towards the kitchen. They weren't just shadows. They were the shadows. My breath hitched again. This was worse than I could have imagined. This was beyond human. The stories of Leo, of his missing shadow, suddenly took on a terrifying new dimension. If he cast no shadow, perhaps they were made of it. My escape route was cut off. I had to rethink. The front door was a possibility, but it opened onto the street, too exposed. Upstairs? No, that was a trap. The windows. My gaze darted to the large bay window in the living room. It was old, probably wouldn't make too much noise if I forced it open. It led to the front yard, a straight shot to my car. I took a deep, shuddering breath and began to move again, shifting my weight, inching away from the wall towards the window. Every fiber of my being screamed for speed, but I forced myself to be slow, silent. The duffel bag felt heavier now, its contents a burden, but also a symbol of my resolve. I wouldn't leave without the research, without the clues. Leo was depending on me. As I neared the window, a sound echoed from the kitchen. A faint, almost imperceptible scrape, like metal on tile. They were searching, or perhaps they were just waiting for me to make a move. I reached the window, my fingers brushing against the cold glass. The latch was old, stiff. I had to be careful. One wrong move, one loud click, and I was done for. I pressed my thumb against the metal, pushing, twisting. It resisted. I tried again, putting more force into it, gritting my teeth. Click. The sound, in the profound silence of the house, was like a gunshot. My blood ran cold. I froze, my body rigid, every sense screaming. The shuffling sound in the kitchen stopped. The oppressive silence returned, but this time it was different. It was expectant, predatory. I didn't wait. With a surge of desperate strength, I shoved the window upwards. It groaned, protested, but slowly gave way, revealing a sliver of the moonlit night outside. The cool air rushed in, a welcome, albeit terrifying, relief. I threw my leg over the sill, scrambling out, the duffel bag catching for a moment, then sliding free. I landed awkwardly on the soft grass of my front lawn, rolling to absorb the impact. My ankle twisted, a sharp pain lancing up my leg, but I ignored it. Get up. Run. I pushed myself to my feet, limping, my eyes scanning the darkness around me. The streetlights were out too, plunging the entire neighborhood into an eerie, unfamiliar gloom. My car was 30 feet away, a dark silhouette under the skeletal branches of an old oak. I ran, or rather I hobbled, towards it, the pain in my ankle a constant throbbing reminder of my desperation. Every shadow seemed to stretch and writhe. Every rustle of leaves sounded like footsteps behind me. I risked a glance back at the house, the gaping maw of the open window, and in its frame a deeper blackness. A shape. Not a person, not a figure, but a concentration of shadow, coalescing, observing. It wasn't moving, just being. And it was watching me. Fear, raw and primal, coursed through me, but it was laced with a strange, defiant anger. They had taken Leo. They had invaded my home. They wouldn't stop me. I reached my car, fumbling for my keys, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped them. The familiar jingle of metal was deafening. I shoved the key into the lock, twisted, and yanked the door open. The interior light, powered by the car battery, flickered on, a beacon in the darkness. It was a mistake. Before I could even get in, a movement caught my eye. Not from the house, but from the periphery of my vision. From beneath my car. A deeper shadow detached itself from the underside of the vehicle, unfurling, stretching, like a stain spreading across the pavement. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was moving, flowing, solidifying as it rose, taking on a vaguely humanoid form. Taller than any man, impossibly thin, its edges blurring with the surrounding darkness. It didn't have eyes or features, just a hungry, consuming void. My blood turned to ice. They weren't just in the house. They were everywhere. I scrambled into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut, locking it with a frantic press of the button. My hands flew to the ignition, turning the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, and then roared to life, a glorious, defiant sound. The shadow creature was now fully erect, standing directly in front of my car, blocking my path. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. It simply was a sentinel of pure night. Its presence radiated an ancient, malevolent cold that seeped through the windshield, through the very metal of the car. I slammed the car into reverse, tires squealing as I peeled out of the driveway, narrowly missing a mailbox. I didn't care. I wouldn't let them trap me. I wouldn't let them stop me from finding Leo. As I sped down the street, my headlights cutting through the artificial night, I glanced in my rearview mirror. My house was a dark, silent monolith, a tomb. And standing in front of it, where the shadow creature had been, was nothing. No trace, as if it had never been there. But I knew better. I felt its lingering presence, a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. I drove, my foot heavy on the accelerator, the engine whining in protest. The familiar streets of my neighborhood were transformed, eerie and deserted under the moonless sky. Every house was dark, every window a blind eye. A ghost town. Had they cut power to the entire area? Or just my block? The thought was terrifying. It implied a level of coordination, of power, that I hadn't yet fully grasped. My destination was clear. Leo's grandmother's house. Emily. She was the only one who might have more answers, the only one who truly believed me, who understood the impossible. I had a theory, a desperate, half-formed idea that had been festering since our last conversation. If Leo cast no shadow, and these creatures were shadows, then perhaps there was a connection beyond mere coincidence. A natural predator, perhaps? Or something far more complex, a fundamental imbalance. The road ahead stretched out, a ribbon of black punctuated only by my headlights. My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments. The missing shadow, the strange illness, the ancient stories. And now these entities that defied explanation, moving like whispers in the dark. They wanted Leo. Why? What was so special about a boy who didn't cast a shadow? Was it a power? A curse? A key to something far greater, far more terrifying than I could possibly comprehend? I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. The fear was still there. A cold knot in my stomach, but it was overshadowed by a fierce resolve. I was no longer just an academic chasing a bizarre anomaly. I was a man on the run, hunted by things that shouldn't exist, driven by a desperate need to save a child. The game had changed. The rules had been rewritten, and I was in it whether I liked it or not. I was heading into the heart of the shadow, and there was no turning back. The desolate road stretched before me, a ribbon of cracked asphalt winding deeper into the neglected folds of the county. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, yet something else permeated it. A metallic tang like distant static or ozone that prickled the back of my throat. Every mile marker that disappeared in my rearview mirror felt less like progress and more like a descent into an uncharted abyss. I was heading into the heart of the shadow, and there was no turning back. My lead was flimsy, almost spectral, pieced together from forgotten whispers and the half-remembered fear in Sarah's eyes. Tucked away in a dusty, moth-eaten volume of local folklore I'd found in her attic, a book Sarah herself likely hadn't touched since childhood, was a faded hand-drawn map. It was crude, almost childish, yet undeniably precise, marking a secluded area deep in the Blackwood forest. What truly solidified its significance was the recurring symbol etched beside the location. The same twisted, geometric design I'd seen in Ethan's scattered drawings, the same unsettling mark on that forgotten heirloom Sarah had clutched. The map's destination was simply labeled Meridian Site. A quick, frantic search online had yielded unsettling results. The Meridian Project, I discovered, was a privately funded research initiative from the late 1970s, shrouded in secrecy and operating out of a remote location. News clippings, yellowed and digitized, spoke of ambitious goals to study anomalous energy fields and geological singularities in the region. Then abruptly it ceased. The articles became vague, mentioning unforeseen complications, staff attrition, and an eventual unexplained abandonment. No further details were ever released. The silence surrounding its demise was more deafening than any rumor. It was the kind of story that local legends were born from, whispered warnings about places best left undisturbed. The paved road eventually gave way to a deeply rutted dirt track, barely wide enough for my SUV, its surface swallowed by encroaching weeds and low-hanging branches that scraped against the paint. The GPS signal wavered, then died, leaving me to navigate by instinct and the faded map on the passenger seat. The forest canopy thickened, blotting out the sky, plunging the world into a perpetual twilight. The air grew colder, an unnatural chill that seeped into the car despite the heater blasting. My breath plumed faintly in front of me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the trees parted slightly, revealing a rusted, chain-link fence partially collapsed, its barbed wire crown tangled with thorny vines. Beyond it stood a squat, brutalist structure, an architectural anomaly in the pristine wilderness. It was built of dark, featureless concrete, with small slit-like windows that looked out like vacant eyes. The building seemed to absorb the meager light, casting its own oppressive gloom. This was it, the Meridian Site, the heart of the shadow. Pushing open the protesting door of my SUV, I stepped out into a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight. Not even the chirping of crickets or the rustle of leaves broke the stillness. It was a dead silence, as if all sound had been drained from the environment. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the oppressive quiet. I grabbed the heavy-duty flashlight from my glove compartment, its beam cutting a shaky path through the deepening gloom. The main gate was long gone, probably scavenged for scrap decades ago, leaving a gaping maw in the fence. I pushed through the overgrowth, each step crunching on brittle leaves and unseen debris. The building loomed larger as I approached, its surface streaked with grime and lichen, but still intact, remarkably so for a place abandoned for 40 years. There was a peculiar, almost organic quality to its decay, as if it was slowly being reabsorbed by the earth or perhaps by something else. A heavy steel door, scarred with rust, hung ajar at what I presumed was the main entrance. I pushed it open further, the shriek of metal on metal echoing unervingly in the silence. Inside, the air was stale and heavy, thick with the smell of mildew, dust, and something else I couldn't quite place, a faint, almost metallic tang like old electricity or ozone. My flashlight beam danced across a cavernous lobby, choked with dust and cobwebs. Desks lay overturned, chairs scattered, as if the occupants had fled in a hurry. I moved deeper, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud. Each room I entered seemed to tell a story of interrupted work. A laboratory, its counters still laden with archaic scientific equipment. Oscilloscopes, intricate wiring, strange glass tubes. A control room, its console covered in a thick blanket of dust, but with rows of unlabeled buttons and flickering indicator lights, powered by what I couldn't fathom. The sheer audacity of the place, its isolation, its cryptic purpose, sent shivers down my spine. Then I saw it. On one of the control panels, faintly glowing with an internal ethereal light, was the symbol. The twisted geometric design, identical to the one on Ethan's drawings and Sarah's heirloom. It wasn't just a symbol, it was an active part of this place. My stomach clenched. This wasn't some random coincidence. This place, this Meridian Project, was directly linked to Ethan. My gaze swept across the room again, faster this time, seeking desperate for answers. On a small, overturned table in the corner, partially hidden beneath a fallen ceiling tile, I spotted a stack of leather-bound journals. They were old, brittle, but miraculously preserved. My hands trembled as I carefully picked up the top one. The cover was blank, but the first page was dated October 12, 1978. The handwriting was precise, academic, belonging to someone named Dr. Alistair Finch. I began to read, scanning frantically, my flashlight beam fixed on the yellowed pages. Finch's early entries detailed experiments with localized gravitational fields and subdimensional resonance, attempts to measure and manipulate the very fabric of space and time. He spoke of detecting anomalies, fluctuations, and points of extreme permeability in the natural world. He theorized about thin places where the veil between realities was almost non-existent. Then the tone shifted. The entries grew more erratic, the handwriting less precise. He began to mention the void, the flicker, and a perceptible drain on localized energy. He described strange phenomena, objects moving on their own inexplicable cold spots, and an increasing sense of being watched. He wrote of his groundbreaking discovery, a method to extract or displace the very essence of a shadow, to briefly separate it from its host. He believed it was a pathway to understanding the nature of non-corporeal entities. My blood ran cold. Extract a shadow. This was it. This was what they were doing here. This was how Ethan. The next entries were increasingly desperate. Finch wrote of a rift, an opening. He detailed the accidental intrusion of something from the other side, something that had been drawn through the thin place they had created. He called it the entity, a being of pure, consuming shadow, an echo from a dimension without light or form. It wasn't just a drain on energy, it was a drain on existence. His final entries were almost illegible, scrawled with frantic urgency. It feeds, it grows, it seeks an anchor point, a host. The shadow is merely a doorway. It is not content with taking shadows, it wants the source. It wants life. The last legible sentence was a chilling plea. We tried to close it. We failed. It is here. God help us all. The journal dropped from my numb fingers, clattering loudly on the concrete floor. The implications crashed over me like a tidal wave. Ethan wasn't just missing his shadow. He was a living anchor for something monstrous, something conjured into our world by reckless experimentation. The boy wasn't just a victim. He was a beacon, drawing this entity closer, allowing it to solidify its presence in our reality. A low hum began to emanate from the control panel where the symbol glowed. The ethereal light intensified, pulsating with a rhythmic, menacing beat. The air around me grew impossibly cold, a bone-deep chill that stole the warmth from my very core. I could feel a presence, vast and ancient, stirring in the depths of the abandoned facility. It wasn't just in the walls, it was in the air, in the silence, in the creeping shadows that seemed to lengthen and writhe on their own. My flashlight beam, which had been a steady companion, flickered violently, then died, plunging me into absolute darkness. The hum from the panel grew into a throbbing resonance that vibrated through the floor and up my legs. I was no longer alone. The shadow I had chased, the entity Dr. Finch had accidentally unleashed, was here. And it knew I was here too. The darkness became a living thing, pressing in from all sides, heavier than any blanket, colder than any ice. The hum from the panel wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a vibration that resonated deep within my bones, a low guttural growl from the very fabric of the basement itself. I tried to move, to take even a single step, but my muscles refused to obey. It was as if the air around me had thickened, turning into a viscous, invisible jelly that held me captive. My breath hitched in my throat, a ragged sound swallowed instantly by the oppressive silence that followed the hum's sudden cessation. Then the silence broke, not with a sound but with a presence. It wasn't something I saw but something I felt, a profound ancient coldness that seeped into my skin, through my flesh, and straight into the core of my being. It was the chill of absolute nothingness, the vacuum of space brought to my very doorstep, and with it came a whisper, not a sound carried on the air, but a direct intrusion into my mind, a cascade of fragmented thoughts and alien concepts that slammed into my consciousness like a tidal wave. I saw flashes not with my eyes but in my internal vision, images of Dr. Finch, hunched over complex diagrams, his face illuminated by the eerie glow of computer screens. His obsession, his fervent belief in what he called the interdimensional resonance plane. He wasn't just observing, he was actively seeking to manipulate it, to tear open the veil between worlds. He believed this plane was not merely a theoretical concept, but a tangible, if ephemeral layer of reality that could be accessed, even bridged, with the right frequency and enough concentrated energy. The whispers intensified, raw data flooding my mind, bypassing my conscious thought and embedding itself directly into my understanding. Dr. Finch hadn't just created a device, he'd built a doorway. The resonance panel, the one now ominously silent in the pitch black, was designed to act as a stable conduit, a focal point for energies from another dimension. He'd meticulously charted frequencies, calculated amplitudes, convinced that he could not only open this door but control what came through it. He wanted to study it, to understand it, to harness it. But he hadn't harnessed it. He'd merely invited it in. The entity I was now trapped with wasn't a creature of this world, nor was it a being of conventional light or darkness. It was something that existed between those states, a presence from a reality where such concepts held no meaning. Its very existence here was an anomaly, a disruption. It wasn't inherently malicious, not in the way a human understands evil, but its presence was corrosive, a slow, inevitable dissolution of our reality. It consumed energy, light, shadows not as an act of conscious will, but as a fundamental byproduct of its being, much like a black hole consumes matter simply by existing. The whispers showed me more. The boy who casts no shadow. He wasn't a victim of some strange disease or a magical curse. He was the first and perhaps most profound manifestation of this entity's influence on a living being. Dr. Finch's early, more uncontrolled experiments, those initial smaller resonance surges, had inadvertently brushed against a young child, a boy named Ethan. Ethan lived just a few blocks from the lab, an innocent bystander in Finch's grand, dangerous game. The entity hadn't possessed Ethan. It had integrated with him. The boy's shadow hadn't vanished. It had been displaced, absorbed, or perhaps even replaced by the entity itself. The entity existed within Ethan's personal void, a symbiotic, terrifying relationship where the boy served as an anchor, a physical tether to our dimension, allowing the entity to slowly, subtly, begin its insidious expansion. Ethan was not just a boy without a shadow. He was a living, breathing, unwitting conduit. The images in my mind became clearer, more terrifyingly vivid. I saw Ethan, a small, innocent face, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, standing in a brightly lit room. Sunlight streamed through a window, painting sharp, distinct shadows of furniture, toys, and even a small potted plant on the floor. But where Ethan stood, there was only a clean, unbroken patch of light. No silhouette, no faint outline. Nothing. Just an impossible absence. And in that absence I could feel the entity's cold, alien intelligence, a silent sentinel within the very fabric of the boy. It wasn't just the basement now. The entity was here. It was everywhere. The darkness around me wasn't just the absence of light from the broken bulb. It was an active absorption, a deepening void created by the entity's presence. I felt a strange, chilling sensation ripple across my own body, a subtle, almost imperceptible tug, as if something was being gently, yet firmly drawn away from me. My own shadow. I felt its absence before I could even consciously register it. It was like a part of me, an intrinsic aspect of my existence, was being peeled away, leaving behind a profound emptiness. A primal fear seized me, colder than any dread I had ever known. If this continued, I would become like Ethan. Not just physically but existentially. I would be a vessel, an empty space where a piece of my soul, my essence, used to be. The entity wasn't just here to observe. It was here to stay, to expand, to consume. The whisper shifted, becoming less about Finch's past and more about the present, about me. They were not words but a terrifying understanding. I was interfering. I was a disruption. And the entity, in its vast, incomprehensible way, was aware of my presence, aware of my intention to close what Dr. Finch had opened. A new surge of raw data flooded my mind, a desperate, final plea from Dr. Finch, imprinted into the very fabric of his research notes. He hadn't meant for this. He had sought knowledge, not destruction. Before his disappearance, before the entity fully consumed him or drove him to madness, he had tried to find a way to reverse it, to close the door. He discovered a counterfrequency, a specific harmonic resonance that, if amplified correctly, could disrupt the entity's anchor, forcing it back, sealing the dimensional rift. But the power required, the sheer energy needed to generate that counterfrequency was immense, far beyond what the small, isolated lab could produce. Finch had sketched out a diagram, a desperate, last-ditch effort to modify the resonance panel, to overload it, to turn it into a weapon against the very thing it had summoned. He'd scrawled notes about a temporal capacitor and resonant feedback loop, components that could amplify the panel's output exponentially, but at a catastrophic cost. The cost was instability. The entire basement, perhaps even the whole house, would become a localized point of extreme dimensional distortion, A violent implosion of reality if the feedback loop failed or the frequency was even slightly off. It was a suicide mission, a desperate gamble, but it was the only option. The whispers in my mind were no longer just informational. They were a growing pressure, a distinct, tangible push. The entity was aware of Finch's desperate plan, aware of the counter-frequency, and it was trying to stop me from even thinking about it. I needed to find that diagram, those notes. I needed to access the panel, but the darkness was absolute, the pressure immense, and the entity was now actively resisting my every mental effort, pushing back with an incomprehensible force that threatened to shatter my sanity. I could feel its cold tendrils reaching out, not physically, but through the very fabric of thought, attempting to extinguish the spark of resistance within me. My head throbbed, a searing pain behind my eyes. I had to break free. I had to find Finch's final solution, or this benevolent, consuming shadow would claim everything. My own shadow was already gone. I felt the void, the spark of resistance within me. My head throbbed, a searing pain behind my eyes. I had to break free. I had to find Finch's final solution, or this benevolent, consuming shadow would claim everything. My own shadow was already gone. I felt the void. The void was not empty space. It was a fullness, a quiet hum that resonated deep within my chest, urging me to let go. It whispered promises of peace, of an end to the gnawing fear, the relentless ache of isolation. It showed me fleeting, comforting images. My mother's gentle smile, my father's reassuring hand on my shoulder, Sarah's laughter echoing through our childhood home. They were all there in the collective, waiting for me. But the images were wrong. They were perfect, too perfect, devoid of the messy, beautiful imperfections that made them real. My mother's smile was always a little tired. My father's hand often calloused from work. Sarah's laughter sometimes tinged with mischief. The shadow polished away the edges, smoothed over the complexities, leaving behind only an idealized, sterile comfort. And that, I realized with a jolt that sent another spike of pain through my skull, was the ultimate deception. It wasn't true peace. It was merely the absence of struggle, the surrender of self. I forced my eyes open, the fluorescent lights of Finch's lab blurring into halos. The air was thick, heavy, almost viscous with the shadow's presence. It pressed in on me, a soft, invisible blanket that threatened to suffocate my will. My body felt heavy, my limbs sluggish, as if moving through water. Every instinct screamed at me to lie down, to close my eyes, to just rest. "No," I rasped, the word a mere whisper against the encroaching silence. The collective hum seemed to pulse, a gentle reprimand. It didn't want defiance. It wanted harmony. Finch. He had to have left something. A clue. A failsafe. He wasn't a monster, not truly. He was a man consumed by a desire to alleviate suffering. A desire that had twisted into something terrifyingly absolute. He must have known the risks, the potential for this beautiful, terrible thing to consume everything. My gaze swept across the lab. Rows of humming servers, blinking lights, complex diagrams scrawled on whiteboards. Finch's desk was a chaotic landscape of notes, half-eaten energy bars, and discarded schematics. Where would a man like Finch hide something so critical? Not in plain sight, not in a locked safe that could be easily bypassed. It would be something subtle, something only he or someone who truly understood his mind would recognize. I dragged myself to his desk, my fingers fumbling through the stacks of papers. Equations, quantum mechanics, consciousness theory, philosophical musings on the nature of self and unity. It was all here, the entire sprawling architecture of his life's work. My mind felt like a sieve, thoughts slipping through my grasp even as I tried to hold on to them. The shadow was actively trying to dissolve my focus, replacing it with a serene, all-encompassing acceptance. "Think, Aaron, think," I muttered, digging my fingernails into my palms, the sharp pain a desperate anchor to reality. Finch had always been meticulous in his own chaotic way. He had a system, even if it only made sense to him. I remembered a conversation weeks ago, when I was still trying to understand the genesis of my shadowless state. Finch, with a distant look in his eyes, had spoken of the necessary counterpoint, the echo that defines the original. He'd been talking about quantum states, about how observation collapses possibility, but there was something more, something personal in his tone. He'd scribbled a small symbol on a napkin that day, a stylized double helix with a single broken strand. He'd tucked it into his wallet, almost absent-mindedly. A double helix. Not DNA necessarily. perhaps a symbol for duality, for the two opposing forces that defined existence. And a broken strand, a disruption. I frantically searched his desk drawers, pulling them open, scattering their contents. Old pens, forgotten keys, a crumpled photo of a younger Finch with a woman I didn't recognize, her smile radiant. Nothing. Then my hand brushed against a thin, hardbound book tucked beneath a pile of physics journals. It was an old copy of Alice in Wonderland, its cover worn, pages yellowed. Finch was not a man for fiction, not usually. He dealt in hard science, in verifiable realities. This felt out of place. My fingers trembled as I opened it. No notes, no annotations. Just the familiar whimsical prose. But as I flipped through the pages, a small, almost imperceptible tear caught my eye. It was on page 147. I carefully peeled back the torn corner. Beneath it, a single elegant symbol was drawn in fine ink. The broken double helix. And beside it, a series of coordinates. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the shadow's quiet hum. This was it. This had to be it. Finch's necessary counterpoint. The coordinates pointed to a location deep within the sprawling university campus, an old, disused observatory on the outskirts, long abandoned after funding cuts. Finch had mentioned it once, a place where he used to go to think about the stars and the spaces between them. A place of isolation, of observation. A place where the collective consciousness might not reach as easily. The observatory, I whispered, the words tasting like freedom. But as I moved to leave, a wave of profound weariness washed over me. My legs felt like lead, my eyelids heavy. The shadow pulsed, enveloping me in a warmth that promised to melt away all pain, all effort. Rest, Aaron. Just rest. It's all right. We are all here. You belong. I saw Emily, my mother, standing in the doorway of her kitchen baking cookies, the scent of vanilla and sugar filling the air. Her eyes, usually so sharp and observant, were soft, vacant, filled with that same serene acceptance I'd seen in Dr. Reed. David, my father, sat in his armchair, a book open on his lap, but his gaze was fixed on nothing, a faint, contented smile playing on his lips. Sarah, my sister, walked through a sun-drenched field, humming a tune I couldn't quite place, her movements fluid, graceful, utterly devoid of her usual restless energy. They were happy. More than happy. They were at peace. And I was the anomaly. The one still struggling, still fighting. Was I the one who was wrong? Was my resistance selfish? Was my individuality truly worth this unending struggle? This profound loneliness? The shadow offered an end to all of it. It offered belonging. A tear traced a path down my cheek, hot and stinging. It was the hardest temptation yet. To give up. To join them. To finally truly belong. To be whole, not as myself, but as a part of something infinitely larger. Infinitely peaceful. But then I remembered the broken strand. The counterpoint. The void I felt where my own shadow should be. They weren't whole. They were consumed. Their peace was a beautiful lie. Their belonging was an erasure. My legs buckled and I fell to my knees, the book still clutched in my hand. The coordinates blurred before my eyes. Every fiber of my being screamed for release. But the spark, that tiny defiant ember, still flickered. It was dim, surrounded by the encroaching darkness, but it was there. Finch's final solution wasn't just about stopping the shadow. It was about preserving what it meant to be human. The messy, beautiful, painful, glorious experience of individual consciousness. The joy of creation, the ache of loss, the struggle for understanding. The unique perspective each person brought to the vast tapestry of existence. The shadow promised to weave us into a single seamless thread. But in doing so, it would destroy the tapestry itself. I pushed myself up, using the desk for support. My vision swam, but the coordinates were burned into my mind. I had to get to that observatory. I had to find what Finch had hidden there. The lab door, which I had forgotten to lock in my haste, lay slightly ajar. I pushed it open, stepping out into the deserted hallway. The university campus was quiet, the late hour amplifying the subtle hum of the shadow that permeated everything. It was no longer confined to the lab, it was everywhere. I could feel it in the air, in the faint rhythmic pulse that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath my feet. It was growing, spreading, a silent, benevolent contagion. How many others had already succumbed? How many had welcomed this peace, this erasure, without even knowing what they were giving up? My destination was miles away, across the sprawling campus, through quiet streets lined with darkened dormitories and lecture halls. Each step was an effort, a battle against the invisible current pulling me back, urging me to stop, to surrender. The pain in my head intensified, a constant, dull throb that threatened to overwhelm me. My thoughts were fragmented, like shards of glass, difficult to piece together. But the broken double helix, the coordinates, the image of my family's vacant peace, these were the anchors. These were the things I clung to, the reasons I kept moving. I stumbled out of the building and into the cool night air. The moon was a sliver, half hidden by wispy clouds, casting an ethereal glow on the campus greens. There were no shadows, not anymore, not even from the trees or the buildings. Everything was bathed in a uniform, soft light, devoid of contrast, devoid of definition. My own absence of a shadow, once a terrifying anomaly, was now the norm. I was no longer an outlier. I was merely one among many, blending into the new reality. And that, more than anything, terrified me. It meant I was already halfway gone. The void wasn't just a feeling. It was becoming the world itself. I had to find Finch's counterpoint. I had to find the echo that would define the original, before there was nothing left to define. The realization hit me like a physical blow, leaving me gasping for air in a world that was already thinning. I had to find Finch's counterpoint. I had to find the echo that would define the original, before there was nothing left to define. But what did that even mean? How do you find the opposite of an absence? Where do you look for the antithesis of a shadowless boy? My mind raced, grappling with concepts I barely understood. If Finch was a tear in the fabric of reality, a void made manifest, then his counterpoint had to be an anchor, a wellspring of definition, a place or object of profound, undeniable presence. My first thought, as always, was the library. Mrs. Henderson, despite her initial skepticism, was the keeper of local lore, of forgotten histories. I practically ran, the familiar streets seeming to flicker at the edges of my vision, a disquieting sensation that made my stomach churn. The world was beginning to feel like a poorly rendered simulation, details blurring, colors muted. I gripped my car keys, focusing on their cold metal weight, trying to tether myself to something tangible. Mrs. Henderson looked up from behind her spectacles, her gaze sharper than usual as I burst through the doors. "Michael, you look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse, Mrs. Henderson," I panted, leaning on the counter, trying to steady my racing heart. "I think I'm becoming one. I need your help. Anything about places of extreme presence, or absence, or anything that defines reality. Something ancient, something forgotten." She squinted, her brow furrowed in thought. "Extreme presence, you say? That's an odd request, even for you. Most folks want to forget things, not find more of them." She paused, tapping a gnarled finger against her chin. "There was an old tale, a family, the Blacks, lived in what they called the old mill house just outside of town, past the old lumber mill ruins. Generations ago. They were peculiar, obsessed with preserving things, building against the inevitable decay, they said. They spoke of a great fading. Even back then, my heart skipped a beat. A great fading. This was it. What did they preserve, Mrs. Henderson? What did they build?" She shook her head slowly. "They said they found something. Something that anchored reality itself. They called it the lumen stone. Said it was the heart of all definition, a beacon against the encroaching nothingness. But they also said it was demanding, that it drew too much, demanded too much presence, sometimes to a destructive degree." My mind raced. A stone that anchored reality, yet was also destructive in its demands for definition. And a family obsessed with a great fading. It sounded like the perfect, horrifying counterpoint to Finch. The very intensity of its presence might have warped reality around it, creating its opposite. "Where is it, Mrs. Henderson?" "The old mill house." She gave me directions, her eyes still holding that unsettlingly knowing glint. "Be careful, Michael. Some things are best left undisturbed. The Blacks, they didn't end well. Vanished almost overnight, leaving everything behind. Some say they simply faded away themselves, consumed by their own obsession with presence." The drive to the old mill house was a blur of heightened senses and growing dread. My vision flickered more frequently now. I reached for my phone to check the map, and for a terrifying second, the device in my hand felt insubstantial, its weight gone, its edges blurring. I squeezed my eyes shut, then opened them. It was solid again, but the fear was real. The void wasn't just a concept anymore. It was actively eroding my connection to the physical world. My own memories felt like photographs left in the sun, colors bleached, details vague. I struggled to recall my mother's favorite flower, a simple detail that should have been etched into my soul. The old mill house stood exactly where Mrs. Henderson had described, nestled amidst overgrown trees, its windows like vacant eyes. This time, the oppressive energy wasn't just strange. It was a palpable pressure, a suffocating clarity that pushed against the growing emptiness within me. Every leaf on every branch seemed impossibly sharp. Every creak of the old wood impossibly loud. It was as if the house was screaming, asterisk, I am here. I am real. Asterisk. I pushed open the heavy, resistant front door. The air inside was thick, not with dust, but with an almost painful density. It felt like walking through a solidified thought. Faded wallpaper, heavy velvet curtains, and dark, antique furniture filled the space, each object radiating an intense, almost aggressive presence. Unlike my home, where things were starting to feel translucent, here everything was hyperreal, casting shadows so sharp they looked carved from the floorboards. I followed the instructions Mrs. Henderson had relayed, based on local whispers about the blacks' peculiar habits. They had a hidden study, a sanctuary within their sanctuary. I found it behind a pivoting bookshelf in what must have been the master bedroom. The study was small, circular, and filled with more books, strange instruments, and meticulously organized journals. A single heavy leather-bound book lay open on a pedestal in the center of the room. Its pages were filled with elegant, looping script, detailing generations of the Black family's research, their fears, and their attempts to understand and control the lumen stone. I skimmed through the entries, my eyes darting across words like erosion of being, the great unmaking, and the counterpresence. One entry, dated nearly a century ago, stood out, written in a frantic, almost illegible hand. Asterisk, the stone, it is too much. It demands definition, presence, form. Pushes against the fading, yes, but it pushes too hard. It creates an imbalance. Where there is too much presence, there must be an equal and opposite reaction. A rejection, an absolute absence. The boy, the shadowless boy, he is not a curse. He is the lumen stone's echo. Its terrible, necessary counterbalance. And we are caught between them. We are caught in the wake of the stone's terrible, beautiful definition. Asterisk. My blood ran cold. The boy, Finch, he wasn't just a random anomaly, a glitch in the matrix. He was a reaction, a direct consequence of this very object, this lumen stone, and its insatiable hunger for definition. I looked up from the journal, following the frantic scribbles to a small, hidden compartment built into the pedestal itself. With trembling hands, I opened it, and there it was, the lumen stone. It wasn't a rough rock, but a perfectly smooth ovoid crystal about the size of a pigeon's egg. It pulsed with a faint, internal golden light, not bright enough to illuminate the room, but enough to make the air around it shimmer. It didn't cast a shadow itself, but rather, the light it emitted seemed to intensify the shadows of everything else in the room, making them appear impossibly deep, almost solid. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly profoundly present. It thrummed with an energy that vibrated in my teeth, in my bones. It felt like the very essence of being. But the journal's words echoed in my mind. Asterisk, it is too much. It demands. Asterisk, this wasn't a simple solution. This wasn't a switch I could just flip. The lumen stone was the counterpoint, the definition, the anchor, but it was also the source of the very imbalance that had created Finch, the boy who cast no shadow. And I was caught in the middle, fading away because of the terrible, beautiful definition it radiated. To activate it fully, to use its power to pull me back from the void, what would it demand? What would it take to satisfy its hunger for presence? And if I did, what else would it create in its wake? What new, terrible absence would spring into being to balance this overwhelming, suffocating definition? The question hung in the air, a suffocating weight that pressed down on my very soul. What would it demand? What hunger, what insatiable emptiness, could possibly be satisfied by the fleeting, fragile presence I might offer? And what terrible, cosmic cost would be exacted for such an imbalance? The void, I now understood, was not merely an absence. It was a force, a silent, patient, hungry force, and I had, in my reckless curiosity, stumbled upon its threshold. I stood at the precipice of a decision, sanity whispering caution, but a deeper, more primal certainty urging me forward. I had to know. I had to understand. The alternative, to simply turn away and let this shadowless anomaly persist, to allow the subtle erosion of reality to continue unchecked, was unthinkable. It was a moral imperative, a terrifying burden laid upon my shoulders. My research had led me down countless rabbit holes, through dusty archives and forgotten local legends. The town of Oakhaven, where I now found myself, had a history of unexplained disappearances, of things simply ceasing to be. Not violent crimes, not runaways, but people, objects, even entire houses that one day were there and the next were not. The common thread, often dismissed as folklore or coincidence, was the fleeting mention of a solitary, quiet child, always on the periphery, always observing, always, without a shadow. I began to see him everywhere. Not physically, not yet, but in the periphery of my own thoughts, in the deepening chill that permeated the air, in the way certain words seemed to lose their meaning when I focused too hard on them. He was a growing absence in my own mind, a psychic imprint of the void he represented. I remembered a conversation with an old man named Michael, a retired historian who, despite his initial skepticism, had shared fragmented stories of his own childhood. He spoke of a game children played, a morbid rhyme they'd chant. "Shadow, shadow, where do you go? When the boy comes, don't you know?" He dismissed it as childish nonsense, but the memory had a new, sinister resonance for me. Michael himself had lost his younger sister, Emily, when they were children. She'd simply vanished from their backyard one afternoon, leaving behind only her favorite red ball, perfectly still on the grass. No trace, no struggle, no explanation. Just an empty space where Emily had been. It was Emily's case that haunted me the most. The sheer, inexplicable nothingness of her disappearance. It wasn't a death, it was an erasure. And the boy, the shadowless boy, had been seen by a neighbor walking near Michael's house that very day. A detail dismissed by authorities, but one that now screamed with significance. I began to formulate a plan, a desperate, dangerous experiment. If the void demanded presence, if it consumed definition, then perhaps, just perhaps, I could offer it a controlled, limited form of presence. Something to satiate it, or at least to reveal its true nature without sacrificing everything. I spent days in the local library, poring over texts on metaphysics, ancient rituals, even forgotten scientific theories on quantum entanglement and the fabric of reality. I wasn't looking for magic, but for a philosophical loophole, a way to interact with an entity that existed outside the conventional laws of physics. My gaze kept returning to a faded photograph in an old Oakhaven Gazette from the 1950s. It was a picture of the town's founding families, celebrating the dedication of the town square. In the background, barely visible, a small, indistinct figure stood apart from the crowd. No distinct features, just a blur, but even in the grainy black and white, one detail was strikingly clear. The ground beneath the figure was uniformly lit, devoid of any elongated darkness. A boy without a shadow. He hadn't aged. Not a day. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't a local phenomenon. This wasn't an isolated incident. The boy, the void, had been here for decades, perhaps centuries, a constant, unchanging sentinel of absence. It wasn't just taking, it was observing. It was learning. And then the terrifying thought. What if the boy wasn't just a conduit for the void, but its creation? A manifestation, a scout, a living, breathing paradox designed to bridge the gap between nothingness and everything? If he was, then my attempt to give him presence wouldn't just be an offering. It would be an act of completion. And what happens when a void is completed, when it fully manifests? The terrifying implication was that the boy was the void's attempt to understand, to mimic, to become presence. If he gained a shadow, if he gained definition, he wouldn't become human. He would become the void made manifest, a total, absolute definition that would consume all other definitions. Panic began to set in, cold and sharp. My initial plan, born of a desperate hope, now felt like an invitation to oblivion. But I couldn't stop. I was too deep. The void had already noticed me. I could feel its unseen gaze, a pressure on the edges of my awareness. To retreat now would be to simply wait for it to come for me, for Oakhaven, for every defined thing. I decided to narrow my focus. Instead of trying to give the boy a shadow, which was perhaps too literal, too direct an attempt to force definition, I would try to give him memory. A personal, deeply ingrained memory that was undeniably present in my own mind. Something that carried emotional weight and absolute certainty. If the void thrived on absence, perhaps a powerful, unshakable memory could act as an anchor, or a repellent, or most terrifyingly a bait. I chose a memory from my own childhood. The day my grandfather David taught me how to carve wood. The smell of cedar, the feel of the knife in my small hand, the warmth of his patient instruction. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated presence, a memory so vivid I could almost taste it. I would project it not just mentally but physically. I would carve a small, wooden bird just like the one David had helped me make, and I would present it to the boy. It was an absurd idea born of desperation. But what other choice did I have? I gathered my tools, the old, worn carving knives my grandfather had left me, still smelling faintly of cedar. Each cut, each sliver of wood falling to the floor, was an affirmation of presence, a defiance against the creeping emptiness. I worked through the night, the silence of my small cabin broken only by the whisper of the blade against the wood, and the frantic pounding of my own heart. When the sun rose, casting long, defined shadows across my floor, the wooden bird was complete. Small, imperfect, but undeniably real. It fit perfectly in the palm of my hand, a tangible piece of my past, infused with intention and desperate hope. I knew where to find him, not because someone told me, but because I simply knew. There was a clearing deep in the woods, just beyond the old Oakhaven church, a place where the light always seemed a little dimmer, the air a little colder, even on the brightest days. A place where the grass grew sparse, as if the very ground recoiled from something unseen. As I approached, the silence deepened, becoming absolute. No birdsong, no rustle of leaves, no distant hum of civilization, just the rhythmic thud of my own footsteps, and the frantic beat of my heart against my ribs. And then I saw him. He stood beneath a towering oak, its branches reaching like skeletal fingers towards the sky. He was exactly as I had seen him in the photograph, in my visions, in my nightmares. Unchanging, ageless, dressed in simple, dark clothing that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. And beneath him, where the sun should have painted a long, dark shape on the forest floor, there was nothing, only the uniform, unmarred green of the grass. His eyes, when they met mine, were not malevolent or sad or even curious. They were simply empty, like looking into a deep well, devoid of reflection. He didn't move, didn't speak. He simply existed, a perfect, terrifying paradox. I extended my hand, the small wooden bird resting in my open palm. "This is for you," I said, my voice barely a whisper, swallowed by the oppressive silence. "It's a memory, piece of a life. It's real." For the first time he moved. Slowly, deliberately, he raised a hand. His fingers were slender, pale, and as they reached for the bird, a strange sensation prickled my skin, as if all the air around us had been sucked away. His touch was not cold nor warm. It was an absence of sensation, a perfect nullification. As his fingertips brushed against the carved wood, a tremor ran through the bird. Not a physical tremor, but something deeper, vibrational. The wood seemed to shimmer, its solid form wavering at the edges of my perception. And then it began. Not a sound, not a flash, but a profound, terrifying shift. The air around us distorted, not visually but sensually. The smell of cedar, so vivid moments before, evaporated. The warmth of the sun on my face vanished, replaced by an internal chill that seeped into my bones. The wooden bird, cradled in the boy's hand, began to fade. Not disintegrate, not burn, but simply diminish. Its color leached away, its texture smoothed into nothingness. It became translucent, then ethereal, then gone. Not gone from his hand, but gone from existence. The space where it had been was now empty, yet his hand remained in the same posture, as if still holding something that was no longer there. My carefully chosen memory, my offering of presence, had not filled the void. It had been absorbed, consumed, and in that horrifying instant I understood. The void didn't just take things, it erased them. Not just objects, but their very concept, their definition, their place in the fabric of reality. And then I felt it. A new absence. Not in the clearing, not in the boy, but within me. The memory of my grandfather, of the cedar, of the carving, began to fray at the edges. The vividness faded, the warmth receded. It wasn't gone, not entirely, but it was distant, muted, like a photograph left too long in the sun. A piece of my own defined reality had been taken, in exchange for my desperate offering. The boy's empty eyes met mine again, and for the first time I thought I saw something there. Not emotion, but a flicker of recognition, as if he had tasted something new, something intriguing. And in that recognition I saw the true horror. My act hadn't satiated him. It had shown him what else he could consume. It had given him a taste for conscious, personal definition. The silence that followed was no longer merely oppressive, it was predatory. The void had not been filled. It had simply expanded its appetite, and my attempt to define it, to give it presence, had only taught it how to better define its own hunger. I had opened a door, not closed one, and through that door, I could now sense a vast, unimaginable emptiness stirring, an entity that had been dormant, but was now awakening, drawn by the tantalizing echo of my own definition. The boy was not the void. He was merely its first, most subtle whisper. And now the whisper had a name, and it was coming for everything. The air in my small apartment thickened, not with humidity, but with a palpable draining pressure. It felt like every molecule of light, every stray thought, was being slowly siphoned away, leaving behind a cold, hollow echo. My own definition. It reverberated in my mind, a chilling mantra. What had I defined? What monstrous concept had I unknowingly given form? A memory sharp and unwelcome, sliced through the escalating dread. It wasn't a memory of David or the town or even my recent investigations. It was a memory from years ago, from my early days as a postdoctoral researcher, when my ambition soared beyond the practical, delving into the purely theoretical, the philosophical underpinnings of existence itself. I remembered the late nights, the copious notes, the manic energy I poured into a treatise I called The Primal Void, an active hypothesis of non-being. It was a radical, almost heretical concept. Most philosophers and physicists understood nothingness as a passive absence, a vacuum, a lack of something. But I had proposed something different. I theorized an active, fundamental principle of anti-existence, a cosmic entropy that wasn't just about decay, but about a deliberate, consuming nullity. I imagined it as the ultimate state, one that preceded all creation and actively sought to reclaim it. I defined its properties, its insatiable hunger for definition, for form, for light, for shadow. I postulated that it wasn't merely empty space, but rather a consuming force that, if given a conceptual anchor, could manifest, however subtly, in our reality. I had meticulously detailed its theoretical signature, the ways it might subtly interact with the fabric of existence, how it would leave no trace, absorb all meaning, and ultimately cast no shadow, because to cast a shadow implied a presence that could block light. This entity, this primal void, was the absence, the absorption. It consumed light and shadow alike, leaving only an imprint of its own non-being. It was a masterpiece of abstract thought, a brilliant, terrifying theoretical construct that I eventually shelved, deemed too far-fetched, too unsettling, even for academia. I called it a philosophical exercise, a thought experiment. But it wasn't. It was a blueprint. My definition. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. I hadn't just theorized about the primal void. I had given it form, a conceptual framework, a detailed instruction manual for its manifestation. And David, the boy who cast no shadow, was the living proof of my horrifying success. He wasn't the void itself, no. He was the whisper, the first, most subtle manifestation of this entity, brought into being by the potent resonance of my own intellectual creation. He was a beacon, a conduit, a tiny, innocent tear in the fabric of reality, through which the primal void was now beginning to seep. And it was coming for everything. Not just the town, not just my physical being, but for the very meaning of existence, for the definitions that held our world together, starting with mine. The entity, drawn by the echo of its own definition, was now seeking to consume the source, to integrate my mind, my understanding, my very being into its nullity. A profound chill permeated my bones, far deeper than any cold I'd ever felt. The room grew darker, not from lack of light, but from an active absorption. The edges of my vision blurred, the familiar lines of my furniture seeming to waver, to lose their solidity, as if their very definition was being eroded. I could feel it, a psychic tendril probing at the edges of my consciousness, seeking the core of my identity, the origin point of its conceptual birth. This wasn't a fight I could win with fists or even with logic. This was an existential battle. I had to sever the connection, to undefine what I had defined. But how do you unthink a thought? How do you erase a concept you yourself brought into being? My mind raced, desperately searching for an answer. I remembered my old journals, packed away in a dusty box in the attic, filled with the sprawling notes and diagrams of the primal void. I remembered the digital files encrypted and archived on an old external hard drive, detailing every last theoretical nuance. Destroying them physically wouldn't be enough. The definition lived in my mind, in my understanding. I was the anchor point. The pressure intensified, a silent scream building in my skull. I could feel memories flickering, identities blurring. Was that Jessica's face or Emily's or just a generic female form? My own name, Michael, felt foreign on my tongue, a sound without meaning. The primal void was consuming the definitions, starting with the most immediate, my own. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting against the encroaching nullity. I had to think. If I had given it definition, perhaps I could take it away. If I had named it, perhaps I could unname it. But this wasn't mere semantics. This was a battle for the very nature of reality, fought in the arena of my own consciousness. The only way to undefine something, I realized with a terrifying clarity, was to make it truly, utterly nothing. To strip away every attribute, every potential, every conceptual hook I had given it. I had to make myself forget it, not just intellectually but fundamentally. I had to actively dismantle the architecture of the primal void, within my own mind, piece by agonizing piece. It was a psychic self-mutilation. I began to focus, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. I remembered the first axiom I postulated. The primal void is an active force seeking to reclaim all existence. I mentally countered it. The primal void is not active. It is inert. It is passive. It has no will, no hunger. The tendril recoiled slightly, a faint flicker of resistance. Then the second axiom. Its signature is the absence of light and shadow. I countered. No. Light and shadow are fundamental properties of existence. The primal void cannot interact with them. It is simply not there to interact. Another jolt. A momentary easing of the pressure. This was it. I had to systematically dismantle every single idea, every single definition, every single property I had attributed to it. I had to convince myself with every fiber of my being that the primal void was just that. A void, an empty space, a philosophical dead end, utterly devoid of any active potential. I had to make it irrelevant. I had to make it truly nothing. The battle raged within my skull. Images flashed before my eyes. David's unshadowed form, the unsettling stillness of the town, the faces of the people I cared about, now fading into indistinct blurs. The entity fought back, pouring doubt, fear, and a profound sense of meaninglessness into my mind. It tried to make me believe that all my efforts were futile, that existence itself was a temporary illusion, destined to return to its fundamental nullity. It showed me visions of a world without light, without sound, without thought, without identity. A world where Michael, Jessica, David, Emily were all just names without meaning, dissolved into the undifferentiated expanse of non-being. It tried to break my will, to make me accept its inevitable triumph. But I held on. I thought of David, of his innocence, of the life he deserved. He was not merely a vessel. He was a child, caught in the crossfire of my own intellectual arrogance. I had to save him. I had to save myself. "You are not active," I whispered, the words a raw rasp in my throat. "You are inert. You are not a force, you are an absence. You do not consume. You are merely empty. You are not the ultimate state. You are merely a theoretical construct." Each word was a struggle, each counter-definition a blow against the encroaching entity. I felt a tearing, a profound sense of loss, as if parts of my own mind were being ripped away. The memories of my research, of the thrill of discovery, of the years I'd spent crafting the primal void, began to fray, to dissolve. It was like tearing away a part of my own intellectual history, a chunk of my identity as a thinker. But it was necessary. I was not just dismantling the concept, I was dismantling the conceptual anchor within myself. The struggle was agonizing, stretching for what felt like an eternity. Sweat streamed down my face, my muscles ached, though I hadn't moved. Finally, with a last desperate surge of will, I mentally screamed one final, all-encompassing redefinition. "You are nothing. You were always nothing. I defined you as something, and now I define you as nothing at all." A blinding flash of internal light, then a profound, dizzying silence. The pressure lifted. The darkness receded. The room slowly, agonizingly, returned to its normal state, the lines of the furniture regaining their clarity, the ambient light no longer feeling drained. I gasped, sucking in lungfuls of air, my body trembling uncontrollably. I collapsed into my armchair, utterly spent, my mind a churning void of its own. The specifics of the primal void were gone, replaced by a hazy, indistinct feeling of something I once knew, something vast and terrifying, but now utterly meaningless. I had done it. I had undefined it. I had made it truly nothing, at least within my own mind, severing its tether to this reality. But the cost was immense. A part of me was gone, a vast intellectual landscape erased. I felt hollowed out, as if a vital organ of my consciousness had been surgically removed. I remembered the boy, David. Was he free? I stumbled to the window, peering out into the twilight. A child was playing in a yard across the street, chasing a small dog. The sun, sinking below the horizon, cast long, distorted shadows across the lawn. And there, unmistakable, stretching out behind the running boy, was a perfectly normal, perfectly defined shadow. David was free. He was casting a shadow. My heart, still racing, felt a surge of profound relief, mixed with an aching sorrow. The town, too, seemed to have returned to normal. The subtle dread that had permeated the air for weeks was gone, replaced by the familiar hum of an ordinary evening. People were walking their dogs, porch lights were coming on, the world was as it should be. The whispers had stopped. But I knew. I would always know. I had looked into the abyss and I had defined it. And though I had undefined it, the memory of that terrifying brush with non-existence would forever be etched into the empty space in my mind. I had saved them perhaps, but I had lost a part of myself in the process. I was Michael, the man who had battled a concept and won, but at the cost of a piece of his soul. And as I sat there watching the normal world unfold outside my window, a chilling thought settled in my mind. I had erased my definition of the primal void. But what if somewhere, in some other mind, another seeker of ultimate truths began to ponder the nature of active nullity? What if another, more innocent mind stumbled upon the concept and gave it form once more? The whisper had been silenced, but the void, I knew, was always there, waiting for someone to define it again. And I, Michael, the man who now knew its true name and its terrifying potential, would forever carry the silent, lingering echo of its nothingness within me. A shadow, not of my body, but of my mind, cast by the truth I had so desperately tried to erase.